It's live. So for this episode, we're going to switch it up a little bit and turn the tables. So I have with me here Peter Cunha, who is the head of business development for Legex Software, which we've talked about is my day job. And so Pete's actually I'm going to turn it over to Pete, and he's gonna poke at me a little bit like I usually do to everybody else.
So this is going to be a fun session, guys. We're going to turn the tables a little bit. It's funny.
I'm scared.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, where do we even start this? I always like starting with, I've known Nicole for quite a bit of time. It's
a while.
Yeah, it almost seems like 30 years at this point. And the highlights of knowing you for so long is I've just seen you kind of grow. And I guess we've seen each other grow. We've been at each other's weddings and certainly have so many fond memories of you. But it's funny as I'm sitting here and you're just kind of minimizing what you call a day job. How many hours of the week would you say this day job that sounds like a hobby, which isn't?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about being an entrepreneur, right? Like, it's not even about how many hours you spend in a day. Like, you're always doing it. Like, it's the reality of being an entrepreneur. Like,
right.
It's just, there's no such thing as 9 to 5. It's,
right.
Everything that I'm doing in the day, I may actively be doing something else, it's in the back of the mind. Like, oh, I could totally do this, with this marketing aspect, or, this is a great way to solve this software problem, or, I don't know, but it's just part of also, I think, my background psychosis of like being a problem solver is that like until the problem is solved, it's always churning in the back of your mind.
Right. And I just think that that's where you have to come up with a solution, right? And that's where the obsessive compulsive kind of nature, right, is. And, let's talk about this for a sec, right? Like, let's back up because for people that don't know, Legex is a portfolio management and accounting system that's dictated to like endowments, single family offices, fund of funds. So if you're outside of that space and you're more on kind of say the gym side or the social media side, it's just to give you kind of parameters of what we're talking about here. But for people that don't know, I mean, this is to me what you're really good at. It's the accounting side of really complex situations, right? So kind of take us through the journey of like what got you into accounting in the first place. Because this is not doing your taxes. This is like next level type stuff.
Well, it's not even, I guess it all starts with accounting, I suppose, at the end of the beginning and the end of the day. I, in school was, no surprise to anybody, one of those ones that was like an AP kid, advanced placement type of kid, taking all the classes and, science, math, language, whatever it was that I was in the accelerated classes, with the exception of art. Not my thing. I tested for it. It was very clear to everyone, this is not your forte, which is what's really odd because I have, a child that's about to graduate from college with a graphic design degree who was very much an art kid. So you can imagine.
Skips a generation.
Something like that. And she's not good at math. But I was an academic kid, right? And when I was in high school, like being kind of the overachiever in, growing up in the 80s in New York kid, I had places to go, right? So it was like, I got to figure it out sooner rather than later because I got to beat my competition. So like, I can't wait to go to college to decide what I want to be when I grow up. I got to start thinking about this now. So like, what do I want to do with myself? And there was an accounting class that was available in my high school. And, but it was not in the curriculum or the program that my guidance counselors had me on, right? So, but I said, hey, I want to take this class. Like, take me out of AP physics because I don't want anything to do with that anyway. Like, I want to take this accounting class. And, like, the guidance counselors in my school literally told me no. Like, that's not the path that you're on. And I was like, but I think I would like this. And this might be what I want to be when I grow up. Like, what's wrong with you? And, like, they just, like, wouldn't have it. Like, to the point where my mother actually had to go to the school and tell them, no, you're going to let her take this class.
Right.
And which is crazy to me, but it's like also the whole, I don't know, to me, it's the New York school system type mentality of like, back in the day was like, you're a Regents kid or you're not, or you're like this type, you're on this path or you're not on that path, right? Which I didn't love participating in it. And then as a parent, really didn't like it. But so I took the class and I was like, you know what? This is what I like doing. And like the thing about it is like weird and like it's oddly satisfying to go through it and have everything balanced at the end of the day. All feels right with the world, right? Like so, and it just happens to be one of those things that's a useful skill to learn in any business, right? Like to know how to keep the books for a business, just applies to anything that you're doing. And but it became quickly apparent to me going to college that like I did not want to be the type of accountant that ever did taxes or ever did auditing. That was too, too regimented, too strict, too rote really to interest me. And the classes that I enjoyed more were more like managerial accounting and, those types of things. And then the other business classes. And like, oddly enough, like in college, anything that wasn't a business class or an accounting class that I took was always psychology or sociology.
Okay.
Always. Like to the point where like I almost was able to have a minor in that because it was just, those are classes that interest me. If I have to take something else, why not do it? And honestly, I've said this to other people. I think psychology classes and sociology classes should be requirements for business school because I think understanding people's motivations is something that gets lost too much in business.
I agree with you. I honestly think that there's one thing that you and I are both attracted to is the entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned something that struck a chord because I've seen you kind of go through this. It's when people tell you can't do something, you're more motivated to prove them wrong.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
So, it's always the underdog, right? It's, people that aren't the underdog don't ever see it, right? I always think of like the bigger firms, right? The fund administrators, let's say, it's kind of where it just becomes way too corporate. You and I have talked about this where it's like, we love free thinkers because we're always thinking of ideas. We're always coming up with creative ways. And like you said, we're trying to solve a problem that actually exists. And, it's always been like, as an entrepreneur, you have to prove yourself, right? And that's fair. I think that that's a fair kind of level of, if I'm going to take the risk of you, I need guaranteed or assurance.
Oh yeah, and not everybody can do that. And it's not how everybody's brain works.
Right.
Like, you either have that mentality or you don't, I feel like, right? And it's not to say that, there are people that shouldn't try to have their own business, but it's just, to be an entrepreneur, I mean, you have to be a little bit of a risk taker, but you also have to be problem solver, right? Because like you got to be the person who's doing everything from soup to nuts and be perfectly fine with that, but also and be the person that solves all the problems.
So that's interesting because we're skipping way ahead here, but we will get to Legex, I promise you. But even with the Legex side, right? And I'm I'm the most recent hire at the company, but it's what I'm noticing is a lot of people do have problems, right? And we talk about different problems, right? And like, mental health, let's say, for example, that could mean anything, right? And especially on the accounting side, it's like, what are we doing here? And, going back to, all right, so you want to do a very specific type of accounting, which is more the managerial type stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to do, basically, in college, I wanted to do anything but, CPA type stuff. But quickly got hired, while I was finishing college, actually, got hired at a small software company called Hedge that did investment accounting, portfolio management and accounting, financial accounting. And for me, it was the perfect storm to happen for me because it took everything that I liked to do, gave me Again, I grew up a child of the 80s, right? So like working in the investment world was like, oh man, this is like really one of, like Gordon Gekko, Wall Street, I'm going to go work in New York City. That's what I'm going to do. And like, yeah, like this is what I'm going to do. So to kind of get into that was like perfect for me, but also I had the perfect environment of people, right? Who were willing to teach me everything there was to know about it, which, I knew accounting. I had an accounting degree at the time. Like I didn't know anything about the investment world. It's certainly not investment partnerships and, fund accounting and hedge funds and
stuff.
family offices. Like I knew nothing about it, but was very much a sponge, no, like tell me more. Like I want to learn it. But I remember sitting there, in the first 6 months of having the job, just being like, there's no way I'm ever going to know all of this. Like there's just all the nuances and technicalities and all of that, like how to looking at the woman who's training me, who's not that much older than me at the time, how did she even get there? How did she learn all this stuff? And just dove into like, I want to learn all of it. Right. And, in working through that, again, it's a problem solving, right? Like you got clients that I got 1 million spreadsheets. I'm on this crappy other system, that's old or it's old technology or whatever it is. So how do I solve that problem with this new software? Or the part that I actually really like is, we have the software, but, and it solves all of these problems, but we have this one other thing or this one other nuance or this one technicality that I spend all kinds of time because of that small thing. How can we make it work for that, to solve that problem? And you'd be surprised how many, especially in the industry in which we work, how many problems that seem so small, but could take 2 weeks of a person's business life, professional life day to day, to get the answer to that, to get to that report or to aggregate all of that information to be able to solve that one problem for the person who's asking the question, right? And so to be able to look at it and know the moving parts, know how this current software fits together, understand that person's problem, and then be able to deliver them a solution is the thing that makes me the happiest to do day to day.
And I've seen you make things. One thing that I'm a big fan of is when people say that you're an expert, right? It's what kind of determines somebody that's an expert, or they make something that's really complex look really easy. And that I can guarantee you is every time I present you with a challenge that somebody's going through, it's like, oh, they do it this way, and I just need a little bit more detail on this, right? We were talking about specifically a prospect where it's data retrieval and then the aggregation part, and then it's okay, the reconciliation part after some OCR thing, an optical recognition tool where it's what? And it's you're oh, we do all of that, right? And it's just okay, what
easy
component? It's easy, right? But to the person that's got to actually do it and perform, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or whatever, it's not that easy. Hence why we come in, and it's always the disruptive technologies that really kind of come into this. And it's if Excel was perfect, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now, and we'd be talking about totally.
Trust me, there's plenty of people that believe it is still to this day.
Part
of our job is pulling that security blanket away from them a little bit, but yeah.
Right, and I think that's the number one challenge. It's the devil's in what you know, and the devil's in the details, right? And I was asking you off camera, what do you think your superpower is? And we've talked a little bit about it, but it was
it is that problem solving. To be able to the problem solving and to be able to triage.
Right.
In real time a little bit too, which is kind of, I think, so there's the problem solving, which is, what I've always liked to do. And, the thing that fulfills me the most and is, part of the software and consulting work that I've done in any job that I've done, it's all been about that. But the thing that's always, I think people have seen that I can do is I always say to people, I only sweat the small stuff. Right. And people are well, what the hell does that mean? Right. And it's what I mean by that is the big stuff doesn't bother me. Right. If it's important, I'm not sweating, I will nitpick, excuse me, the day to day, like the little details of stuff, and get upset, if we don't get those little details right. But when there's a legitimate problem, or, a client's got a deadline issue that has to be resolved right now, or, there's, a problem organizationally, whatever it may be, that's the time where it slows down. And I'm the person that says, okay, everybody calm down. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and can easily kind of plot that path in a calm and rational manner, which is also not something that a lot of people do. And it's funny because people look at it see that I'm an emotional person day to day, but it's those in the trenches triage moments that kind of, it makes you able to kind of work at that higher level, I think. And it's the entrepreneurial thing, I think, that brings it.
See, and it's funny what you were saying is because I've read a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, right? Where it's like you let that stuff go and then, you focus on the things that are really important, but then immediately cross-referencing that to, call it football, right? You show up to the game, you don't practice at the game. That's where all the detail goes in. Exactly.
All the sweating happens at practice. During the game, you're calm. Yeah.
And that's part of the journey, right? Because it's understanding clients' needs, what they need, and then coming up with those solutions and seeing if anybody else has those same issues. So we kind of left off. So hedgeware, right? So now we're in the software. You've been in software. You have an interest in accounting.
Well, just hitting on the kind of that problem solving thing again. What's brought me kind of through my career in that is the times where I've had to kind of dig in to understanding clients and people better. And those are the times in my career that I feel were most impactful and, definitely have led me to where I am now. Are the times where there was a big problem, an overarching problem that we're trying to solve. The first time I ever got involved with family offices in particular, I worked on software that was mostly geared towards hedge funds for a long time. And we had one of the products that I was managing, the organization wanted to sunset. So we have this great product over here, Nicole, that you run, this other one that's older technology, and half of the client base easily ports over to that software application. But we have this other group, called family offices, and they're highly resistant to the change. So you need to go meet with them, listen to what their problems are, and try and convince them that they need to move over here because we're going to sunset that and that we need to, get them to move or do something else. And so I spent, the better part probably of a year traveling around the country, visiting all these different family offices that were clients of this application and just learning their business. Because I had to do a full-blown kind of gap analysis of, what do you do now? Knowing what, our software does, how can I bridge that gap for you? And, at the end of the day, it turned out that this software cannot solve their problems, is really what it ended up with. Because if you didn't know about their businesses and you just kind of understood it from a high level, it would look like they're doing the same thing as hedge funds and they're doing the same things as these other types of investment groups, but they're not. Just the nuances of their day-to-day, and the types of questions they get asked. And how many people work in an office, versus a hedge fund, for example, it's just vastly different. You're in offices with 3 people versus, 27 people doing basically the same amount of work, right? And they're getting, but they're also paying bills for people and doing, and having a much more personal relationship with the consumers of the data that they're working with than, hedge funds do. So there was a lot of different things to understand there that the higher ups in the company that I worked with just couldn't comprehend, right? And so they were expecting it to come out of, okay, here's this gap analysis, here's all the stuff that we're going to build. And at the end of the day, I said, I don't think you can get there because it's not just about building the functionality. It doesn't have their perspective, and it's never going to. Right. And so being able to sit down with people and come to that kind of appreciation of what they do is something that I really enjoyed. And I think, again, really affected me. And it's something that kind of drew me to, after kind of leaving the hedge fund software world, I moved south and started to do consulting. And I did family office consulting, like, because I started having, those relationships just from, the software industry that I worked in anyway, but got asked to do consulting specifically for family offices. And I said, okay, yeah, I know a little bit about them. I did this thing. But again, the ability to kind of dig into and do business process review and system selection. And again, that problem solving of, our CFO is about to retire and we don't know what to do. Help us solve that problem, is something that I found really fulfilling.
So let's just backtrack a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew you when you still lived in upstate New York,
Mm-hmm.
and you made a personal decision after working at a software company
Mm-hmm.
to relocate to Myrtle Beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was, did you retire when you came down here? I think part of the game plan was
the thought was to do that. Like I had dreams of doing that. Part of why, how I ended up leaving New York was, we were looking to sell the software company that I had co-founded with a friend of mine. And so, we were looking to go that route. And so it was, I'm going to step away from the business and I'm going to move south because, this is what we're doing anyway. And part of the whole thought process of it was just leaving the whole scenario, right? I'm leaving New York and the whole New York lifestyle. I'm leaving the hedge fund industry, and I'm gonna do something different with my life, right? I've been successful. I feel successful at what I've done here. It's time for me to go do something different, And I had big dreams of, even before I moved, I spent maybe 4 months not working. And by the end of the 4 months, I was dying. Like I just did not know what to do with myself, right? And it was a joke that that ended up, kind of ended up being true that we used to make. Is my friend Ron and I, who started TCAS Solutions, Penny at Work, the company that we were getting ready to sell, always had the joke that we would make between each other is like, after this, like, we're not gonna do anything important, like none of that. Like, I want a job where, like, the hardest question that I ask anybody in a day is, do you want fries with that? Right? It was like the joke that we made. Like, I'm not working in anything
Careful.
more comfortable, more complicated than that. But then we would joke and say, yeah, but like, we both know how that's gonna end. Like, by the end of, the first week of working there, Ron's recoded the cash registers and I have, a new workflow for how to make fries, so like, it's just not how we're built. So like, it was a dream that I knew was a pipe dream. So like, I started when I came down here, I was like, no, okay. So I know I can't sit still. We've proven that. So let me just get a job. I'm going to go be an accountant somewhere. Again, as an accountant, it's a job that translates to anything. Let me just get an accounting job in South Carolina and just do my thing. And, that didn't last very long because, I went from basic accountant at the firm to the president of the payroll company within 6 months because it was, if you're a useful person, people recognize that and
Right.
say like, oh, wow, okay. Especially, with the skill set that I was bringing into, a small business, it was like, why are you sitting at an accountant desk over here doing, daily payroll processing, right? But then that's when I got the call to kind of do some consulting and started doing that because I felt like, okay, who am I kidding? Yeah, I probably need to, go back to being useful in that capacity, right? Like,
Yeah, and you make it sound so simple, right? Because I was with you at TKS, and I remember going through that. Like, one of the things that I appreciated was that, again, going back to the entrepreneurial spirit, was that you did build something, you did see it out, and there was, what I guess a reward, let's say, at the end of it, for lack of a better description. But at the same point, like, I look up to that because I'm also an entrepreneur at heart, and it's like, what did somebody once tell me? It's like carrying a heavy stone on your back up a hill.
mm-hmm.
Everybody's looking at you, but they're not willing to help you, right?
No one's running over
Until
there,
you
yeah.
get to the top of the hill, and then
Yeah,
people
and
want
then
to know how
everyone's in. Yeah.
So I just remember somebody saying it's like that was the hard part about building something, right? Because we believe in it.
Yeah.
We have other people that believe in it, but we don't have everybody believing in it.
No.
And then when you do, you're like, oh, this is why we did all the,
But that's part of it too, right? In that, where a lot of people go wrong is, trying to build something that they don't believe in. Like, it's just, like how many people are like, oh, like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, I'm going to find a business to start. And it's like, okay, but what do you want to do? I don't know. I don't care. I just want to run a business. And it's like, it kind of doesn't work that way. Like, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to care, about the mission, of whatever business that you're doing, or it's going to show, right? Like you might, get a little bit down the road, but if your heart's not in it, people are going to know.
Right. No, 100% with you because, we kind of went different routes. Although we're sitting here together, it's like, I went into the real estate side, and you want to talk about like, oh, he makes it look so easy. Everybody gets a real estate license. What they don't know is that my first call is at 6:30 in the morning every day, and many times where I'm going to bed, sending my last email at 10 o'clock at night. Not that it's investment banker hours, but it's pretty damn close. Yeah, and it's like just enjoying it, right? And I love being part of the mission now because we're back, right? It's like, all right, what are we doing? How are we servicing? How are we helping people? I'm also a Rotarian where, the motto is service over self. And it's like, it's people think it's about the money. It has nothing to do with the money. The money's kind of like a byproduct, right? It's like if you build something that's really good.
Well, that's the thing. Like you and I have in common. Like at the end of the day, I want to solve problems, and at the end of the day, you're not happy unless you're selling stuff, right? Like unless you're making deals, right? And like you said, like pay me what you're going to pay me. I just want to close deals.
Right. Like, if I'm doing my job,
yes, I need to get a commission at the end of the day, but I'm motivated by closing deals, right? Me, like I'm motivated by solving problems, right? Like so when I meet clients, obviously I want to bring clients into the business. We're trying to grow the business, like we want the name out there. But the thing that I'm excited when I meet new clients is that I want to hear about your problems and know what I can do to help you with them, right? And the more ways that I can help solve the problems, the better, right? Like,
so this is interesting, right? Because you mentioned, okay, now you did the consulting stuff, and I believe, if I'm correct, kind of working with LegX. How did you wind up at LegX? Is that part of the consulting? Kind of walk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I did actually come to LegX through consulting. I actually knew of LegX because I did compete with LegX in prior software lives because LegX has actually been around since 2010. So knew of LegX, but hadn't really met the people. I think you had actually met Chris and people before I had, right? Just having those interactions. But I did know the former CEO of LegX, again, from selling him software when he worked at an investment group. So he and I were friendly, and LegX was had a problem to solve. Right. So, he called me up and, knew I was doing consulting and said, hey, like, we just need help for a day, and I know you're good at this thing, like at, kind of hearing what the problem is and saying, this is kind of the direction I think you should go. And so he called me up and said, can you just come to Boston for the day? Sit with us. We'll tell you, what we have going on, and like just tell us, what you think we're doing right. What like we'll show you the application, and this is kind of the area of concern that we have just based on some feedback that we've gotten. And it was about kind of general ledger functionality and things like that. And so I went there for the day, and that's where I first met Chris McCoy for the first time ever, and it was just really impressed with the software that they had built, right? And seeing it in action and, listening to the problems that they had, they weren't big problems, right? But the thing about the organization at the time is, Chris, he and I get along really well because he's also a problem solver at heart, right? So like he and I were immediately simpatico, right? Like, we're cut from the same cloth. But his background is more on kind of the finance and performance side and didn't have any of the accounting knowledge. So, at the time, a lot of the accounting functionality and things like that were kind of client driven, is how like the functionality came to do what it did, right? And because they didn't have the subject matter expertise in-house that really kind of knew the accounting that way. So that was a lot of the questions that they asked me, and, that I helped them with. But like I said, I immediately, felt a connection to Chris and the organization, and that this is something that could really do well. It just needs that subject matter expertise to kind of take it to that next place, and to kind of get it to where it could be amazing at. And like the great thing about Legex that I kind of knew before I even met Chris, but didn't really have an appreciation for until that day, and then really after starting to work here, was the approach to the software and the problem solving, and all of the tools that they were able to put into it that make the client's life that much better. And that was kind of their perspective on it. And, having all of these really nice tools and processes and workflows and all of that great stuff and performance calculations and all of that. And I thought about it and how at TKS and Penny, all of the things that this software could do were all things that people would ask us to do, Ron and myself. And Ron and I'd be like, yeah, that would be nice, but like, I don't have time for that. I'm worried about doing really complex calculations, and all the audit trails and getting the numbers just perfect. And, and we just wouldn't take the time, to build in all of those tools to make everybody's life easier. We just looked at it like very utilitarian, and it was a great product, but like we would not entertain those tools. And what Legex did was had all of those great tools, right? So like the thing that it was missing was that attention to that particular piece that I had. Right. So like it's what made it a great combination of me kind of coming on board there, and why I immediately said to them, I was like, I'm doing this consulting thing and I love it because I'm getting to meet all kinds of different family offices and solving their problems. But like, I love software and I can help you guys. Right. So like that was kind of how I ended up, even coming on board.
So you and I personally have had a professional career together. I was there for the TKS days with Penny, and I was the director of business development for them as well. And I remember the painstaking hours of just being rejected because we didn't offer the portfolio management piece. And
we didn't have that flash,
the sizzle, right? Yeah. And I just remember it was always, this is a lead that we lost 2 years ago. Their contract's probably over. Now you can go sell us to them. And I was like, that's kind of like, and again, it was when your competition is free, that's a really hard price tag to beat. And one of the beautiful things, and I agree with you, is that we do have a very robust, general ledger, but we also have the portfolio side of it too. So it makes my life easier, but at the same time,
you have a lot to sell. Yeah,
there's so much going on where the real consulting part, and that's the problem solving that you're talking about, really come into play. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I think makes our approach a lot different than a lot of other people is because you end up having, we're a software company that's made up of consultants. Right, problem solving consultants. Like that's so. Like when we come in, that's what we're looking to do, right? So yes, I'm trying to sell you software, but I'm really trying to solve your problems, right? So I want to know about you, I want to know about your problems, and I want to solve them. And if Chris is the person that comes in to talk to you, same thing. Like all the people that we hire, all kind of have that same mentality of we're trying to be problem solvers. But with that, so we also look at it. Like, we're not just trying to build the same software as everybody else is that's, doing the same things a little slightly different than everybody else. We're looking at it that we're trying to innovate in an area that people stopped innovating decades ago, right? Like, because it's boring portfolio management and accounting stuff. But, being problem solvers, it's, you still have unsolved problems. You still have things that, historically all the software companies and administrators and people have just said, yeah, that would be really nice, but it's way too hard to build, right? So, we look at that and go, no, how do I do that? And, the problem why a lot of places, don't end up solving these problems and they end up just kind of tossing it up that it's too hard is because what it requires you to do is, one, have, a command of the subject matter, and understand it inside and out. And two, you have to be willing to start from the ground up with it, so it's hard to do when you have an existing software company, right? But the way that we have even originally architected all of what we're doing this now is to be able to be flexible enough to do things differently, right? So like we're able to, tell you, what did you know and when did you know it? Like knowledge date type of reporting stuff is, one of those things back in the day from, I can remember, my first software job, like that people have been asking for. And it's like, yeah, no, nobody does that. It's too hard to do. But like, so you have to be able to look at it and say like, no, like this is a worthy problem to solve. And yeah, it's going to be hard. And I probably have to use new tools, new technology, look at the problem in a different way than I ever have, to be able to then solve that problem. And, so one of the things that we focus on now is just like data reliability and transparency, right? Everybody's so focused on like getting the data and pushing it out the door, working at it like, well, is that really the right data? Because now you have data comes from all these different sources, and AI's involved in some of it. And like, the reliability of it really starts to get called into question when you start, aggregating from very disparate sources and technologies, and then kind of jamming it all together, to be able to look at it and say, what was the source of it? How old is it? What type of data is it? And to be able to analyze in real time and then present, to the user, can you rely on it or not, is like a huge tool that like no one's ever tried to do that before, it's certainly not in the way that we do it, which is, an algorithm that we put together to just actually measure data reliability, for example. And like, that's something that we're doing that nobody else does. And it's an area that we're looking to build out, to use AI tools to then analyze the data that's coming through the application to tell you how reliable a manager's estimates are, for example. Like all of these things that like, because we now have a mature product that's reliable and does a great job of all of these things, and we have the subject matter expertise in-house, can really kind of just start to look at all that different stuff.
So there's a couple of things that I've noticed is that although you're the subject matter experts, right, per se, it's that I've realized that there's a lot of risk, not a lot of risk tolerance, I should say, for change.
Well, in our clients, for sure.
Yeah, so you have to get this right the first time. You really got to wow them. And really kind of like, from my perspective, it's easy because I know you guys, I know your history, and I believe, because I know how good you are at what you do, it's the software's there, but, forget about the functionality sometimes, because at the end of the day, it's like, does it make my life easier? Does it reduce risk? Is it efficient? Do you get, for this cost, you get to, say, reduce headcount somehow? These are all important things outside of the actual functional part, right? Because if I had the choice of doing, okay, I know what I'm doing now I have to learn a whole new software. And there's like, how many times have we gone through this where it's like, people love to over-promise and under-deliver, right? It's like, oh, okay, like, I realize the error of my ways. Is Legex still willing to work with? Oh, yeah, we are, but it's like, what could people, 3 things not technical that people get, by Legex, right? You get the efficiencies.
Well, let me get on my soapbox a little bit here, because this is kind of, one of those areas that even when I was a consultant, that people would have to hear my rants about this particular topic. It starts with, again, understanding your client's needs, right? And like, it's the thing that I always rail about, right? Is that if you do not spend the time to understand who your clients are and what their needs are, and it's not like, I understand this particular industry, so therefore, no, understand this client and their needs, their family, their workflow, what they're trying to get out of the system, what pains them the most, what are their drivers, and what is their measure for success? Like if you're not taking the time to do that and you're just treating, like every new client like a data conversion exercise, and then I'm going to support you going forward, you're not going to be successful. Like you get away with it for a period of time, but like that's not being successful to me. Like, and it's why, at LegX, one of the things, and we've marketed it a little bit this way is, we're building relationships. We're about having a relationship with you as a client. We're partnering with you as a client, right? So, it's trust. Right? I want to build that trust. I want you to look at me like the subject matter expert and that I'm here to solve your problems, and trust that I have your best interest at heart in trying to solve those problems. That it's not just about me selling you software or consulting or whatever it may be, but like I actually am trying to solve your problems. And I think that's the big difference, because I get it, like especially a lot of our competition, they're institutional, they're large corporations. It's hard to do that, but it's what gets lost, right? And so to me, it's always, I'm someone that prefers to work at smaller companies because of that reason. Like I like having the relationship with clients. I like, the more intimate relationship there of, being the trust and the loyalty and the, everything that comes, and making friends with my clients, right? I think there's something to be said about that. And I think, especially when you look like at an industry or types of organizations like family offices, I mean, these are generational organizations, right? So like that's really what they need. The staff that works at a family office there works there for, decades, right? Like, so it's about building long-term relationships, not just year over year software license revenue, right? Like you have to kind of look at it like that, in my opinion.
And that's the whole thing. It's like you really do become part of the family or extension of, right? Mm-hmm. It's I never quite understood why people play golf, but this would be one where it's like you go play golf and you
learn about people.
Yeah, you learn about them, and it's interesting to see how we grow. So I'll put you on the spot here a little bit, right?
Here we go.
These. Where do you see LegX in the family office space in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, not just in the family office space. I mean, it's obviously, like we're servicing like, any kind of asset allocator that, wants us to help solve their problems. But where I see us is, again, continuing to innovate and to solve the other, to help solve the problems no one else is even paying any attention to, to do more value additive type of functionality, and, to partner with other organizations, right? In terms of growth of the functionality and growth of the organization, the subject matter expertise that, we're looking to have. The data confidence is, like I said, one of those things that we're looking to, really kind of push that down the road and incorporate AI technology and all of that there. So I think where LegX goes is, to continue to be innovators in the space, but also to be viewed more as the subject matter experts too. Because I mean, we're at the end of the day, we don't want to get out of our consultant kind of problem-solving roots. Like, again, we want to be viewed as the people that you come to, that are going to help me solve my problems, right? And, it's as the CEO, it's one of those conundrums of, like, you want to grow the organization to be, as big as it could possibly be and, best valuation it could possibly have, and take it where it goes. But, we definitely want to, continue to have those personal relationships with our clients, into the future for sure. Like, we're not looking to, the last thing that we ever want to be is like low touch. Like we pride ourselves on being high touch customer service type of organization and have those type of relationships.
Right. And, you touched on a lot of good points, right? And for me, the way I kind of envision it, it's like, if you're in the alternative investment space, period, you have to have LegX. Like, that's just kind of, it's going to be to an extent, right? Us or somebody else that's comparable, right?
Well, I mean, having something to, I mean, yeah, I mean, the days of Excel and QuickBooks is just, yeah, like.
Right. And we know the two trends that I'm seeing is that family offices, depending on what report you see, are going to triple if they haven't already tripled in sizes. And then, again, we keep touching on it, is the alternative investment space, where this isn't just a couple of custodians running or managing your money, where it's getting more and more complex, and what's considered an asset that was non-traditional, artwork, planes, cars.
I mean, all the co-investing, direct investing.
Right. And
private investing is the thing, right? Like private investment funds, private equity, real estate funds. I mean, and anything alternative is, where everybody is focusing a lot of it. Marketables are marketables, right? But it's something evolutionary wise, in an organization that you see become, more private investing focused, but just trend in general, more interest in the private investing side as, kind of the market becomes less predictable and, driven by other things that
we're going through a change, just kind of, I guess, in a geopolitical sort of way. Like the whole world seems like, it's being disrupted, I guess would be a better word. But and there's going to have to be innovation to go along with it, right? And especially for people that are risk averse, it's just, okay, so how do you help them? How do you grow with them? So...
but that's the thing about staying nimble as an organization, like especially a software company, that I feel like, is that, you become too institutional, too rigid, too corporate, too siloed, all of that. You can't adapt, and like we have an environment now, like where the stuff changes, the technology changes really quick, the products that you're working with change really quick, your clients' needs change really quick, so like if you don't have an organization that can understand the fundamentals of it, and then be able to deliver, problem-solving solution, in a small amount of time, you end up having to look for, now I'm going to buy another thing, right? I mean, so, to me, staying in an organization that's able to be nimble like that, like I said, is kind of where I would like to keep, Legex.
And the other part of that is, if we haven't already kind of talked about it, is that we do integrate. We play very well in the sandbox with everybody. We were talking about one of the newest things was with Plaid, the partnership with them and being able to pull in data. Every time somebody mentions it, I'm thinking of like buzzwords that bill pay.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, we don't do check writing, but we do integrate very well with bill pay.
But that's the thing. Like, and running a software company is one of the things that you kind of have to work with and work around, right? Because you run a software company, it's full of software engineers and developers, and they're famous for anything's possible. You can build anything, right? And, naturally want to build everything from scratch, So like in running that kind of business, you have to be able to look at it and go, no, we don't need to recreate the wheel. That's okay. Like, I understand, like, you could rebuild this, but why, right? And so when you look at, again, a client comes to you with a problem to be solved, or, an infrastructure of problems to be solved is really what we're talking about. You don't have to be all things to all people, right? The ability, though, to recognize the value of another tool and have a relationship with those people to where you can say, you know what? I know people who do this really well. We're just going to plug in them into what we do, and it helps solve your problem, And like, I don't have a problem actually doing a shout out to my favorite one that I use as an example of that all the time. Is there's a company out of Europe called Cascade, right? And they specialize in really complex waterfall calculations and fee calculations, right? So calculation engine does this really hard thing to do. And it's something that I can appreciate because I've built that before. These are calculations we've done before. They do it better than anybody I've ever seen, including the way that we ever dreamed of doing it, right? So I look at it now, and I look at Legex. It's not something that we do at Legex. Could we build it? Sure. I have plenty of resources that have built this technology before, built these calculations, like probably some of the, the best people that have built this in the industry. But I'm not going to build that again. Why? These guys do it really well.
Right.
Like better than we ever would do it. And, they're great to work with. I have a relationship with them. I know, like I've already been able to integrate with them, just bring them in. Right. And obviously from a business perspective, you have to work out, the nuances of cost and, how you price and all of that kind of stuff. But I would much rather spend the time and effort on that relationship and how do we price it and all of that than trying to recreate that wheel, which they do really well. Now, it's not to say that there's not businesses that I would not feel that amenable to working with, because there are, but like it's just a perfect example, and there's plenty of them that we take that approach with. Alchemy being another that does the OCR for Legix, and it's something that we even have such a relationship that we've white labeled it to be part of the Legix offering right out of the gate. Again, because they do it really well, and now there's other solutions that do it, but we made that relationship with them. Could we build that? Sure. But why? Right.
So what I'm seeing here is take the consultative kind of approach. We have the platform that solves, for most cases, at least 75%, if not 80, 85%. Then we got to piece everything together. And we have those relationships. And that's where it's interesting, because where you're really heavy, and from the accounting standpoint, which we've talked about, it's like, okay, you need an accounting piece, and just the fact that you're, Cascade, again, another shout out. It's just, it's easy to get all these things rolling together. So I want to go back, because I know we're kind of getting close to cutoff time, but it's what I love doing this one. You have Tina's how old?
She's 21.
21.
Actually, oh shit, she's 22.
What we talked about.
Sorry, teen, when you edit this.
We talked about how you got started in the business and was having really strong mentors. I find that one of the best piece of advice is that I always give young kids is, if you want to do something well or become really good at something, is that you have to partner up with somebody, not just because they're successful, but they actually want to see you succeed. What sort of advice do you have people that would be curious to, hey, I love what Nicole's done, and how would I, go about following in your footsteps or anything like that?
Well, I definitely think it's the people that you work with and appreciating the skills, and the value that the people around you bring, to you and what you can learn from them, and in both a positive and a negative way. Like the ability to appreciate this person's really good at this, but they're not good at that, and then be able to learn from, I want to be that. I want to be this. I don't want to be that. And, just paying attention to what the people are doing around you, I think is so important. Right. And really appreciate those people, like you mentioned, that, are mentors to you. Right. And in that is what they are. Right. To utilize them in that capacity. Right. Because, especially I think, people that are the age of my daughter and millennials and all that, have a tendency to just not see that, not see other people for the value that they're bringing to them, and a lot of it is, we have a tendency to be so caught up in our own stuff, right? Not appreciating, other people's perspective and value, right? And I think that's a lot of what mentoring helps to do, is to kind of give you that perspective, right? Like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to spend time with you to explain it to you and just show you that perspective so that you can have that appreciation. So having, attaching yourself to people that, can be mentors to you, I think is so important, and recognizing who those people are and who those people aren't, is really, there's been several people, that I've been fortunate enough to be associated with, and I wouldn't be anywhere that I am today without them, at my original job, Hedgeware, and then after we were bought by SS&C, the one guy that was my boss at the time, his name was Bob Pomprion, definitely one of those people that I referred to as a mentor in life, always. And, he was a very big presence, right? So like there was a lot that I learned from him. In again, one of those good and bad, story kind of people. Like I want to do this that he does, but not that he does. Big presence, overwhelming, personality. Very controlling, he was also like 6'7", so like, somewhat, menacing in the office, right? But I was also one of the few people that could work with him and deal with him closely because I wasn't intimidated by him, partly because I have a father who's also large and has that intimidating presence. So like I was never bothered by him the way that other people were. But he was somebody that, again, had a command of the subject matter that he was working with, right? So like, and was more than happy to explain it, right? But he was also the person who instilled upon me the thought process of you have to learn who your clients are. And you have to sit down and have a kickoff meeting and you have to understand their business. And then not only understand their business, document that you understand their business, and then have them agree. By showing them that document so that everybody's on the same page. And the most important thing is agreeing on a measure of success, right? And that's something that I learned from him that, you'll hear me talk about that, every day at work, like, dudes, this is what we're doing. We what's the plan? Let's document it, measure for success, all of that. And I got all of that from him. But like one of the most impactful conversations I remember having with him is, when we got acquired, being a small company originally, we had Bagel Fridays, right? And so the company bought everybody bagels on Fridays. And it was just like, it was a small thing that the company did, right? But how important it was, right? And I remember when we got acquired, I had lunch with him one day and a few other people, and he was talking about how, SS&C wants to do away with this for our office because they don't do it for any of the other offices. They only do it for ours, and it's not fair, and, to the rest of the organization because they're not going to pay for everybody else to have bagels because they're such a big company, so they want to take him away. And he really, went to bat for this, particular thing because it seems small. And
right.
and that, but if we add it up and we do it for everybody, it's unfair and all of that. And I understand that, but to take that away from this group of people, like it doesn't cost you that much money to keep doing it, but it will cost you employees when you take it away because, you're paying them and like the whole environment and all of that, but it's the little things like that that matter to employees and to people, and to just do those little kinds of things and the little acknowledgments and just the little thing where you're giving back to your employees and how important that is another thing that I learned from him, that like you can't overlook those things, because those are the things that show loyalty and that gain loyalty and that people appreciate more at the end of the day than what you're paying them and, what their title is and all of that.
We talk about this, at least I do, culture
Mm-hmm.
being the number one thing, right? And kind of the example that I like to say is people that will leave if you give them an extra dollar,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just say, hey, listen, like, whatever you're making, I'm going to give you an extra $1. And they're like, peace, I'm out. Yeah. Versus, hey, listen, we talk about this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I have a 5 to 7 year vision
Mm-hmm.
of where I think I'd like to see Legex. And again, being more of a household name and,
Mm-hmm.
like, why do you not have Legex
Mm-hmm.
versus like, who is Legex?
Yeah.
And it's just, that's the beautiful thing of it. And I think that when you have that sort of culture and you've really done a really nice job of building, like what you said, loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
and because we believe in this product. Nobody came in here and said, "Oh, like let's see if this works out." It's like,
Yeah.
how like what's it going to take? What do we have to do next? Right?
Yeah, no, we have all long-term people, and people that really believe in what we're doing and have been working here for years, right? Like I said, you're the newest person, but at the same time, you have relationships with the people in the organization, not just myself, right? So you still have that. You see the vision, and you have the relationships with the people in the organization. So like that's the kind of people I like working with.
It's really interesting, right? Because we were talking about mentors for a little bit, right? Let's talk about just those kind of relationships, right? Because I always say, going back to the 20-somethings, sorry, 20-somethings.
Yes, we're going to pick on you. We're old.
Yeah, we're old. It's just like literally like, tell me who you hang out with, 5 people that you hang out with the most, and I can tell you everything about your life, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
all right, so
Yeah.
we were talking about one person off camera, and it's just, if you ever kind of scrape the surface and really pull back the onions, you get a deeply loving and smart, intelligent person. It's just they can't help themselves. From doing all the other stuff. And it's like, the beauty is, I remember like an artist talking about, it's like, you have to go so far out of your mind to create the art, to be successful and creative. And what if you take all the distractions and then try to be, it's like, we've taken the distractions out of our life. You and I have both made personal sacrifices to even just be here in this room filming right now. And it's like, all right, what is this all for? And it's like, okay, we see what you're doing. This is what we're doing. And it's like, we want to, again, it's be aligned, not with everybody, but the right people, right? Because they believe in the vision and everything else. And just to point out, right, we are, we're a product of a family office, right? Our investor is a single family office, right? We delve into the fund of funds, the endowment space. And it's like, you get to have all these great minds and everywhere. And it's like, this is what these guys are doing. You guys should probably be doing this as well.
Yeah.
Not because you're lane or your silos doing it, but somebody close to you.
Yeah.
In terms of that. But just wanted to share that before.
Yeah. No. What I was going to say is, like it's the organizational and the who we're surrounding ourselves with. It's always something that like I'm looking at, not just in the people that hire that we work with, but the partners that we have. And one of our close strategic partners recently went and met with them because we're looking at kind of getting more involved with them and understanding them more, and how can we even just firm up the strategic relationship and take it to the next level. Just understanding them as an organization. We're talking about like Forest Systems. Their organization is so similar to ours, and but again, they are made up of people who are strongly passionate about solving that problem, and their particular problem is specifically, advanced general ledger accounting and financial statements and bill pay and, tax ledger and, some really specific stuff that complements what we do really well, but also their organization complements us so well, right? So it's just, they have people that have been there for a long time, are, heavily invested in the success of the software and the organization. And you just feel it, which is just one of those things that, again, makes us want to, work together with them so much more. And that's what I look for kind of in everybody that we're kind of, working with on that particular level. Because I think it's so important, like the culture and the, what you're bringing to the table there.
And I love that, right? Because, again, going back to Forest Systems, they do have an amazing product, right? But nobody knows about it, kind of like,
Yeah, they have the same problem we do, yeah.
Yeah, the feedback. And it's like, okay, like that's a today problem. That's not a forever problem.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Well, I mean, but I look at it too, like, we're two organizations that have similar problems, in that respect. And that's why we're looking to kind of, partner with them to the extent that we are, because we can help them solve their problems the same way they can help solve our problems. Again, it's just, it's about problem solving, right?
Right.
That's the, the moral of the episode. Right?
And the beautiful thing is, like, again, not that this is a sales pitch, but what I love about the way we're kind of presenting this as well is really trying to, talking about the partnership piece of it is we're not going at people saying, hey, lock into a 2-year contract. We're literally like, hey, listen, you want to prove a concept? You want a trial period? Well,
I mean, but it goes to, again, the difference in approach, right? Because I've always looked at it this way. What we do is so complicated, right? And like implementations take time to accomplish and effort and all of that, to the extent that if I'm doing my job the way that I should be doing my job, you should not want to leave. So it is not, I should never feel the need to lock you into a contract. I should just be doing my job.
Right.
That's the approach, and I've always felt that way. That's why, we invoice the way we do, why our contracts are structured the way we do, and why we approach the relationship the way that we do. Like, I'm here to help solve your problems. I want to have a relationship, a close relationship with you. I want to continue to do this job properly, right? If I'm not doing my job, tell me I'm not doing my job, right? But I'm not going to lock you into a contract and not let you leave while I don't do my job. Like, that is never going to be the case. Yeah.
No, and that goes without saying. I think you almost have to kind of guarantee that you're doing a very good job at what you do. And again,
keeps you honest.
And it's so crazy because the complexity of it is that they're one-offs, right? You might have, like I said, 95% you do like everybody else, but there's this, omnibus accounting portion of it, or how you account for things because the family's already been doing it. We were talking about like the ham story where it's like, why do you cut the ham at the end? It's like, well, my mother did it, It's like, well, I'm going to ask her, why do you do it? It's like, well, my grandmother did it. And it's like, ask Granny, like, why did you do it? It's like, well, the pan wasn't big enough. And it's like, oh, scratching your head. Like, why are you still doing
here we
it
are.
that way?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and again, just tidbits. I always like to kind of end up on some personal stuff. I know you're a music person because we've gone to concerts.
Yes.
What's your last concert that was not Dave Matthews?
Curveball on that one, because obviously the last one was Dave Matthews. I mean, but come on. I mean, I live, I love where I live. Don't get me wrong. But it's a little bit of a live music desert here, being, like you got to travel, to actually go see music, unless you're just going to go see, a tribute band at the House of Blues, which I am not above doing.
I love the House of Blues.
I will do that, but I want to see like original music too, and I don't have, honestly, I'll listen to any kind of, I think that's something you and I have spent a lot of time in just random places listening to live music, because both of us are like, I'll listen to whatever if it's live, right? Like, play it, so, but what was the last band like before that? Honestly, I don't even know.
So I'll give you one. I've been listening to a lot of Dire Straits, right? And I'm always like, most underrated band, right? Like, one of them in my book is Dire Straits, right? So we're at some party on Saturday and the guy's playing Mark Knopfler, right? It's like Sultans of Swing, and I'm just like, that guy's good, right? Like, he's really talented. So, all right, so what are you binge watching then?
Oh, that's an easy one. I have not seen the last episode, which came out last night, but like, best thing on television, Shogun. Hands down. I know you're laughing. And like, cause I'm not even somebody that like, I don't even like subtitles. Like, I am irritated. I'm irritated by subtitles, right? But it's like, a lot of it's in Japanese, right? But I'm telling you, ridiculously good.
Where do you get that? Netflix?
It's on FX.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's so good. And I mean, it's like a recreation from like a 70s like miniseries, but so good. Like, honestly, hands down, best thing on television right now. Yeah.
I'm currently binging The Traitors on Peacock.
Okay.
Yeah, Peacock.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about, The Traitors. Yeah.
So that's where you get a group of people, and there's 3 people that are like moles, I guess, or traitors or whatever, and you have to figure it out. So it's like a real life Clue, right? Like who's the traitor and this and that.
Figuring it out, yeah.
And it's like, I love the human element of like Survivor's another big show that we love watching. It's not so much because who do you take to the end with you?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, there can only be one. And I remember I was watching a season of like the Traitors. They had 3 traitors and 1, what they call faithfuls. And they get to the final 4. And she's like, well, we all got to be faithfuls. Like, I trust all of you guys. And they're like, well, sorry, I'm a traitor. I'm a traitor. I'm a traitor. I'm like, you missed out on this one.
Yeah.
And it's that's when you're like so off. But that was somebody's reality, was
Sure.
that she believed everything. You know, it's like the ham going in the oven.
Yeah.
It's because
Yeah.
that's what everybody did.
Yeah, that's the thing about those shows. Like I like, and why I probably don't watch them as much anymore is it's like I just sit there and like analyze the psychology and motivation like of
Right.
all these people, and it's like almost like work.
Oh my God. So are you a Survivor fan?
I watched it back in the day, but I haven't watched it in
Okay.
years.
So what they call it now, the modern Survivor, right?
Yeah.
Like the old school Survivor does not equate to like.
Oh,
people,
really? So it's less Lord of the Flies and more something else?
People have studied the game. You know,
Oh,
everybody's
so
a
now it's
liability.
game theory around Survivor. Okay.
Right. So now all of the top players get picked off because every player is a student of the game for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to fly under the radar because if you're too much of a threat, you're gone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
That makes sense. Yeah, but that's what kind of like always, like after a while you could kind of always pick it out.
right. And it's just like, you know, the guy that's like, hey, you know, plead your case as to why you should pick me. And it's like, I didn't do anything, but this guy knew that I would always have
But let me
this-
throw that guy under the bus.
yeah. So it's you know, it's just fun. But bands, concerts, like I don't think of it much because we have so many music venues up in New Jersey.
Yeah, like
that
you guys are spoiled up there. I was spoiled when I lived in New York. Like I didn't realize how spoiled I
yeah,
was.
although
But like I
it's-
said, now I got to travel. Now I got to come see you. I got to go to New York. I got to drive 3 hours. You know, like the last show I went to, Dave Matthews, obviously, but I drove to Charleston to go see it. But it's this, even in Charleston, you're talking about a tennis stadium, right? So it's like you're not getting big music.
Right, but
You know.
sometimes that's better, right? Like
I know. No, I like I said, I love like live music. We got, you know, the waterway down here, like, you know, just a string of bars that just has, you know, randoms playing music at each one of them. Love it. Love it.
It reminds, like you just kind of say that like that's not a big deal. I was in Ibiza, and every little beach bungalow had their own resident DJ, right? So like, you know, there's 30 bungalows and they all have DJs, and like there might not be anybody in there, but all of these guys were like world renowned DJs, like just practicing and you know, being in that vibe. So yeah, okay, it's not. Again, there's certain bands that I love that I'll travel anywhere for. I won't go to LA or anything like that, but it's like
You draw the line.
I draw the line with like 3 hours. Like I won't go past 3 hours. Like I'm not going to go to Taylor Swift in Pittsburgh like my buddy did.
But if she comes to New
If she
York,
comes to New York, I'm still not going. So I mean, here's another one. Let's throw this one out. Have you listened to the Taylor Swift double CD that just came out?
I have not. No.
Do you plan on watching the Taylor Swift CD or listening?
It's not on my radar, no. But no, would I like if it came across my hearing? Sure. Like I don't have anything against it. Definitely not seeking out. Like if it takes work for me to go look it up or
Right.
But if it happens to play in my presence, I will appreciate it.
Okay.
How about that?
I'm going to have to make a few points because I don't think we can stop until I mention this. So
Okay.
we've talked a lot about accounting and portfolio management systems for the alternative investment space. Did you know, how long have you owned your gym?
Since 2015.
2015. So you've owned a gym for almost 10 years. She doesn't talk about it because...
Well, people on this show have heard me talk about it, but I don't. In my daytime life, I don't talk about it as much. No, I
Okay.
try to, you know, focus. Yeah.
She's also a foodie. What's your number one dish go-to if you're at a pinch? I'm coming over as a guest.
Oh, wait, that I got to feed you or
Yeah.
that I want to eat? Because those are two totally different
Let's
things.
go with you first, and then what do you feed
Me, I'm like, you know, my last meal, I'm looking for like a beet salad. And I know that sounds like people are like, what is wrong with you? Including my husband. Like,
There's two people. There's two people in
Hey.
life. You either like beets or you hate beets. There's no in between on that
I'm
one.
like, and it's not even a healthy thing. It's just, I don't know, like beets, goat cheese, like, I don't know, where could you go wrong?
Amber, you're loving this right now. Okay, wherever you are. Love you, honey.
But like, what am I feeding you? I don't know, probably a steak. I don't know. Something like, but what am I going to cook? What do I like to
I was
cook?
thinking like
I
Italian.
like to cook,
Yeah,
right?
I know you do.
So like, you know, my thing now being a Southerner, I got the smoker, you know, so I'm doing some barbecue, you know, like all that. You know, I married into an Italian family, so, you know, we can do some Italian stuff,
Right.
you know. my daughter now, like she's moved out. So like we do, Sunday dinners because I like to cook and, because she likes to come and take food, so she can eat for the week. So like, we do the requests that I get are like, like a chicken saltimbocca or,
Okay.
Chicken cutlets or,
I,
pulled pork, they make put in the work on that or.
I say yes to food.
But I do like to cook. I mean, that's actually the thing at the end of the day. Like I'm not the one that, I'm too busy to cook. Because to me, like it's the unwinding. Like I relax by cooking, which is why I like doing Sunday dinner. At the end of the day, I'm finished work. Oh, now I have to make dinner. And it's not that thought process doesn't cross my mind because it's still like I have a thing to do. I can't go like veg. But I like the act of cooking because it's, again, you're making something.
Right.
Like I'm building something. I don't know. It's the from scratch thing. But don't ask me to bake. That's not a thing.
That's an Amber thing. And then we question a little bit. Have you ever seen the show like Nailed It? Right.
Yeah.
You're like looking at that. It's like.
Yeah, no, I don't bake. Like it's too specific for me. The thing I like about cooking as opposed to baking is it's less precise. You can kind of play around and, but that's also the problem that my family has is because I never make it twice the same way. Like if you're like, hey, make me your meatloaf. I really like it, or tell me how to make your meatloaf. Like I'm very much like my Southern grandmother was. It's like I put these things in there in roughly these, ratios, and I taste it and I, look at the texture, like I'm one of those kind of, people. My grandmother was famous for telling my mother when she asked how to make her biscuits, flour this and right much milk. And my mother's, being, from New York is like, I don't have a measuring cup that says right much on it, but it's like, you just know. That's how I like to cook.
Yeah, fair enough. This is your podcast. What is your final question usually?
Well, you already asked it. My usual question, ending question is, who would you say was the person who had the most influence in your life? And, the guy that I mentioned that was my mentor would definitely be one of those people where I just learned a lot of different life stuff from both professionally, personally,
right.
How to, raising kids, like, interpersonal skills, things like that. I learned a lot from him. And then, my former business partner is, extremely good friend of mine that I still lean on, day to day, of just, I'm going to because I have to because we got to do the plug too because he's also running for local office in Sarasota. So Ron Cashton, who's my business partner, running for I think it's city commissioner in Sarasota. Get out and vote. Also hugely like influential in my life because one, he was the co-founder of TCAS Solutions and Penny. And like, called me up one day and, said, hey, I'm starting this company. I want you to do it with me. And which was just one of those things that I was so blown away because he was somebody that I looked up to, as like, uber smart, can answer any question, but also just all around like knowledgeable, great guy, always willing to help me. And just be there to, again, problem solve for people. The fact that he would give me that opportunity was just like so, I don't know, overwhelmingly awesome, right? That like, I still look back on it as like, the so lucky for me to have that. But then just working with him and learning all of that, so it was also hugely influential. So, but don't forget to vote for Ron.
Vote for Ron, and I'll give you, he's got your interest in mind. I'll give you my Ron Cashin story. Little known fact, I worked with Nicole before, but I actually declined the job the first take. Mm-hmm. And Nicole reached out to me. She goes, well, before we give you a final no, why don't you talk to Ron?
Yeah. Meet this guy. Just do me a favor, meet this guy.
Meet this guy. I'm like, I did. And Nicole and I worked together for I believe almost 5 years, and until the company was acquired, and kind of again finishing off the vision that you had for it, and it's genuinely good because I've worked with you guys before, and I admire you guys. Like I always tell people, I'm like, I didn't come here to make more money. I came here actually taking a pay cut because I believe in the product so much. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And, more importantly, thank you for letting me host this. I feel like I did
absolutely.
nothing,
Well,
but
this will not be the only time. Trust me. You guys will be seeing Pete again. All right, great. Well, thanks, Pete. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you.
And thanks for, turning the tables.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.